My new boss fired me for giving a free coffee to a regular who had forgotten her wallet. We're not a charity, he said. I was heartbroken. But the next Monday, every single regular customer in the cafe was wearing the same custom printed t shirt. And the manager who had just fired me, his face went pale with a dawning horror. Before we get into it, I'd love to know, what city are you watching from today? And be sure to subscribe for our daily stories. Okay, let's head to that coffee shop. The daily grind was not just my job, it was my home. For 5 years, I had been the head barista, the opening manager, the quiet, steady heart of a place that was more than a coffee shop. It was a community center. I knew the regulars by name, not by their orders. I knew about Mrs. Gable's new grandchild, about Mr. Henderson's struggles with his crossword puzzles, about the college students who were cramming for their final exams. My job was not just to make coffee, it was to make people feel seen. And then the for sale sign in the window came down. The old, kind owner had retired, and the shop was bought by a large, faceless, corporate coffee conglomerate. The change was immediate. They sent in a man named Mr. Roth. He was not a manager. He was a synergy and efficiency consultant, a man who spoke in a language of profit margins and customer turnover rates, a language that was completely foreign in our small, warm world. He saw my quiet, personal connections with the customers not as a strength, but as a liability. "You're wasting time, Liam," he had told me in my first performance review. His eyes were a cold, dead, unimpressed gray. "Your job is to upsell, to move the line, to maximize the profit of every transaction. This is not a social club. It is a business." The injustice of it was a quiet daily grind. The warm, inviting soul of our little shop was being systematically replaced by the cold, hard, and efficient machinery of corporate greed. The final and fatal confrontation happened on a Tuesday. It was a slow, rainy afternoon. One of our oldest and most beloved regulars, a sweet 80-year-old widow named Agnes, came in for her usual cup of tea. She was a woman who lived on a fixed income. A woman for whom this small daily ritual was her one and only social interaction of the day. She got to the counter and her face fell. She began to pat the pockets of her old tweed coat with a rising, gentle panic. "Oh, my dear," she said, her voice a small, embarrassed whisper as she looked up at me. "I am so terribly sorry. I seem to have left my purse at home." It was a simple and deeply human moment. The old Liam would have just smiled and said, "Don't you worry about it, Agnes. This one's on the house." But the new Liam, the one who now had the cold, watchful eyes of Mr. Roth from the small, glass-walled office at the back of the shop, he hesitated. I looked at Agnes's face, at her quiet and profound humiliation at having to ask. And then I looked over at Mr. Roth, who was watching us, his own face a mask of cold, hard, challenging expectation. And in that moment, I made a choice. I chose my community. I chose my humanity. I chose the soul of this place over the soullessness of its new owner. I turned back to Agnes and I smiled a real, genuine, defiant smile. "You know what, Agnes? It's your lucky day. All tea for our most valued and most loyal customers is complimentary on Tuesdays. It's a new promotion." I poured her tea and handed it to her. "Oh, thank you, dear," she whispered, her eyes shining with a grateful relief. "You are very welcome," I said. I watched her take her usual seat by the window, a small, happy, valued member of our little world. I knew I was about to be fired. I had just, in a single, quiet, satisfying act of rebellion, broken my new boss's one and only sacred rule. And as I saw the door to his small glass office begin to open and saw the look of pure cold and triumphant fury on his face as he began to walk towards me, I knew with an absolute certainty that I had absolutely no regrets. The few remaining customers in the cafe fell silent, their own conversations dying in the face of this new and very public drama. I just stood behind the counter, my hands flat on the cool stainless steel, and I waited. "My office," he said, his voice a low, quiet command that was more intimidating than any shout could ever be. "Now." I did not argue. I did not make excuses. I followed him into the small, sterile office, a room that had once been a place of friendly chaos under the old management, but that was now a silent gray testament to his own joyless efficiency. He gestured for me to close the door. "You are, I believe," he began, his voice a cold, clinical instrument, "aware of this company's strict and very clear policy regarding the unauthorized distribution of company product." "I gave an old woman a cup of tea, Mr. Roth," I said, my own voice quiet but with no trace of the apology he was expecting. "You gave away inventory," he corrected, his eyes a pair of cold, dead, unimpressed gray stones. "You made a business decision that was not yours to make, and you did it publicly in a way that completely undermines my authority as a manager. You are not just a bad employee, Liam, you are a liability." He leaned back in his chair, a small, triumphant, and utterly merciless smile on his face. "And I have a zero-tolerance policy for liabilities. You're fired. Get your personal belongings from your locker and be off this property in the next 10 minutes. I just nodded. I took off the familiar coffee-stained apron, the one I had worn for 5 years, and I laid it on his desk. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Roth," I said, the words a quiet, simple, satisfying act of my own defiance. I walked out of that office, past the shocked, sympathetic faces of my fellow employees. I walked past the table where Agnes, the sweet, elderly woman who had been the unwitting catalyst for this entire ugly affair, was now sitting, her own face a mask of pure, horrified guilt. I gave her a small, reassuring smile, a silent message that this was not her fault. And then I walked out the door of the Daily Grind, the place that had been my home for 5 years, for the very last time. Agnes watched them go, her own heart a painful, heavy weight in her chest. She was a woman who had lived through a war, who had buried a husband, who had raised 3 children. She was not a fragile old woman, and she was not about to sit by and let a good, kind young man be punished for an act of simple human decency, especially when she was the cause. She went home that afternoon, her mind a quiet, whirring machine of a righteous and deeply felt indignation. She made a phone call. It was to her granddaughter, a young, brilliant, and fiercely passionate graphic designer. "Charlotte, my love," she began, her voice a low conspiratorial whisper. "I need your help. A terrible injustice has been done, and I believe it is time we started a revolution." That weekend, a secret, private social media group was created. It was called the Friends of the Daily Grind, and Agnes, with the help of her granddaughter, began to send out invitations to every single regular customer she could remember. The response was immediate, and it was furious. Agnes posted the story of what had happened, her words a simple, honest, and powerful testament to Liam's kindness and to the new manager's cold, corporate cruelty. The comments section exploded. A flood of stories poured in, each one a small, beautiful memory of Liam's time at the cafe, the time he had helped a young mother calm her screaming toddler, the time he had stayed openly in a snowstorm to make sure the local paramedics had hot coffee, the time he had learned a few simple words of sign language to better communicate with a deaf customer. The group, which had started with 10 members, grew to 100 overnight. And in that small digital space, a quiet and beautiful, angry rebellion began to take shape. Charlotte, the granddaughter, designed a t-shirt, a simple, powerful logo with a coffee cup and a heart. And Agnes, the quiet 80-year-old widow, became the unlikely, inspiring general of a small and very determined army. I spent that weekend in my small apartment, a ghost in my own life. I was heartbroken, I was unemployed, and I was, for the first time in 5 years, completely and totally alone. I polished my resume. I searched for other soulless corporate coffee shop jobs. I assumed that the small, beautiful world I had been a part of at the Daily Grind, the world of my regulars, my friends, my community, had already moved on without me. I had no idea that a quiet and very determined revolution was already underway. A revolution that was being fought in my name. And that the first, silent, satisfying shots of that revolution were about to be fired at precisely 8 a.m. on Monday morning. Mr. Roth arrived at the Daily Grind at precisely 7:30 a.m. on Monday morning, a full 30 minutes before opening. He was a man who believed in punctuality, in efficiency, and in the quiet, beautiful, satisfying hum of a profit-making machine. He had spent the weekend reviewing the previous month's sales data, and he had already identified several key areas for optimization. The first and most significant of these had been the removal of the inefficient and overly familiar head barista, Liam. The boy had been a sentimental relic of the old, unprofitable way of doing things. Mr. Roth had been pleased to get rid of him. Today, he thought, was the first day of a new and far more profitable era. At 8 a.m., he unlocked the front doors. The first customer of the day was, as always, Agnes, the elderly widow. She walked in, but she was not wearing her usual simple tweed coat. She was wearing a crisp, new black t-shirt. On the front, in a simple, elegant font, were the words, "Kindness is good business." Mr. Roth just stared at her for a moment. Strange old woman, he thought. She did not come to the counter. She just gave him a small, polite, unreadable smile, and she went and sat at her usual table by the window. The next customers to arrive were a group of 3 college students. They, too, were all wearing the same black t-shirt. They took a large table in the center of the room, opened their textbooks, and began to study. They did not approach the counter. And then the floodgates opened. For the next 30 minutes, a steady stream of the cafe's regular customers, the people Mr. Roth had only ever seen as data points on a sales report, filed into the shop. The construction workers from the site down the street, the young mother with her toddler, the off-duty police officer, the quiet, distinguished-looking man who was a famous but very private local author. All of them, and every single one of them, was wearing the same black, infuriating t-shirt. By 8:30, every single table in his cafe was full. The room was a sea of black cotton and a quiet, unified, unsettling message. And not a single person had come to the counter to order a cup of coffee. Mr. Roth stood behind his gleaming stainless steel espresso machine, his own carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. This was not a coincidence. This was a coordinated and deeply disrespectful act of rebellion. His annoyance, which had been a small flickering flame, was now a hot and growing rage. He decided to take control. He walked out from behind the counter, a fake customer service smile plastered on his face. He approached the first and most vulnerable-looking target, Agnes. "Good morning, ma'am," he began, his voice a little too loud, a little too cheerful. "A beautiful, crisp autumn morning, isn't it? Can I get you started with your usual cup of Earl Grey tea?" Agnes looked up from the newspaper she was reading. She gave him another small, polite, unnerving smile. "No, thank you," she said, her voice a quiet but firm and unshakable instrument. "I am just enjoying the ambiance." He moved to the next table, the college students. He received the same polite and maddeningly calm refusal. He moved to the next, and the next. It was the same every single time. They were not rude, they were not aggressive, they were just there. A silent, polite, effective army of occupation. New, real, paying customers would walk in the door, see the strange, silent, t-shirt-clad crowd, feel the thick, uncomfortable atmosphere of a protest they did not understand, and they would immediately turn around and walk out. He was losing hundreds, if not thousands of dollars with every passing hour. Mr. Roth sat in his glass-walled office, a general in a transparent bunker, and he watched as his entire well-ordered world descended into a quiet, polite, infuriating state of chaos. The morning rush, a period that, according to his own profit and loss projections, should have been a symphony of ringing cash registers, and the hiss of the espresso machine was a complete and total financial disaster. He tried to fight back. He walked out onto the floor, his face a mask of a forced professional cheerfulness. "Folks," he announced to the room of silent, t-shirt-clad protesters, "as much as we love having you, this is a place of business. I must insist that you either place an order or make your tables available for paying customers." A single, quiet, respected man, a local author who had written his last 3 novels from the same corner booth, looked up from his newspaper. "I have placed an order," he said, his voice a calm and reasonable thing. He gestured to his own, mostly full, glass of tap water. "I paid my 1 cent for it. I am a paying customer, and I will be staying for a while." A quiet, satisfying murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Defeated, Roth tried another tactic. He called the police. 2 weary-looking officers arrived, and Roth explained that he wanted the loiterers removed. The lead officer, a man who Roth did not know, had been a regular at the cafe for years and was a dear friend of Liam's own late father, just looked at the scene. He saw the polite, quiet, and completely orderly crowd. He saw their t-shirts, and he saw the look of pure, petty tyranny on Mr. Roth's face. "Sir," the officer said, his voice a flat, unhelpful monotone, "these people are all paying customers. They are not breaking any laws. There is nothing we can do." The final, beautiful, humiliating blow came just after noon. A young and very ambitious reporter from a popular local news blog, clearly tipped off by one of the regulars, arrived with the cameraman. She began to interview the customers, her microphone held up to the simple, powerful words on their t-shirts. "Kindness is good business. Where's Liam?" The story of the beloved, fired barista and the silent, community-led protest was about to go viral. It was in this moment of absolute and very public chaos that the phone in Roth's office rang. It was not a local call. It was a call from the corporate head office. It was his own, very powerful, unforgiving boss. "Roth?" The voice on the other line of the phone had barked, a sound of pure, cold, and undiluted fury. "What the hell is going on at your location? I am looking at a live news feed of a kindness protest at one of my stores. Our company's name is being dragged through the mud all over social media. Our stock has dipped 3 points in the last hour. You have 60 minutes to fix this. I don't care how you do it, but you will fix it. Or I will." The line went dead. Mr. Roth sat in his chair, a cold, clammy sweat breaking out on his forehead. He was trapped. He was being crushed below by a silent, polite, and surprisingly powerful army of coffee-drinking revolutionaries. And he was being crushed from above by the cold, hard, and unforgiving hammer of corporate capitalism. His career, his future was on the line. And he knew, with a sinking, bitter certainty, that there was only one single and profoundly humiliating way out. He had to get Liam back. He walked out of his office, through the silent, watching, and now very, very triumphant crowd of regulars. He did not make eye contact with any of them. He just walked to the front door, a defeated general surrendering his own failed fortress. He got in his expensive, corporate lease car, the faces of the victorious, t-shirt-clad army a blurry, mocking sea in his rearview mirror. He was on his way to the small, run-down apartment of the unimportant, inefficient, and sentimental barista he had fired just a few days ago. He was not going there to offer the boy his job back. He was going there to beg. His own, carefully managed, optimized career was now in the hands of the very person he had so carelessly and so foolishly and so completely tried to destroy. I spent my Monday in a quiet, gray, depressing haze. The weekend, which I had spent frantically polishing my resume and applying for a dozen soulless corporate coffee shop jobs, had yielded nothing. The silence from my phone was a deafening testament to my new, unwelcome status as an unemployed barista. I had lost more than a job. I had lost my home, my community. And the heartbreak of it was a dull, constant ache in my chest. I was in the middle of making myself a sad instant coffee lunch when my phone buzzed. It was a text from a friend, a fellow barista from another shop. "Dude, you are a legend. Turn on the local news blog. Now." Confused, I pulled up the news site on my laptop, and I stared, my own cup of coffee completely forgotten. The lead story was a live video feed, and the location was instantly, achingly familiar. It was my cafe, my old cafe. The room was packed, a sea of black t-shirts, and on the front of every single shirt was a simple, elegant, moving phrase: "Kindness is good business." The headline at the bottom of the screen read, "Local coffee shop overrun by silent protests in support of beloved fired barista." I watched, my own eyes filling with the hot, grateful tears, as the reporter interviewed a familiar, elegant, and fiercely determined 80-year-old woman. It was Agnes. "We are not leaving," she said, her voice a quiet, unshakable instrument of pure, righteous anger, "until they bring our Liam back." I was still staring at the screen, my heart a chaotic, wonderful, humbled mess, when a frantic, desperate, and very loud banging erupted from my own apartment door. I opened it, and there he was, my old boss, Mr. Roth. He was not the calm, cold, and confident man who had fired me. He was a pale, sweating, pathetic ruin of a man. "Liam," he began, his voice a frantic, pleading gasp. "Thank God. You have to come back. You have to tell them to stop. They're destroying the business. The head office. They're going to fire me." I just looked at him, the man who had, just a few days ago, held my entire fragile future in the palm of his hand. The man who had dismissed me as an inefficient liability. He was now standing on my doorstep, begging. It was a quiet, satisfying moment. I did not speak. I just let him squirm. "Please, Liam," he begged, "name your price. A raise, double your old salary, whatever you want. It's yours. Just please make them stop." I leaned against my doorframe, and for the first time, I felt a sense of a power I had never known. The power that came not from money, but from the quiet, unshakable loyalty of a community. "I don't want a raise, Mr. Roth," I said, my voice a calm and quiet final thing. "I want a promotion." He just stared at me, his eyes wide with a confused, dawning horror. "I will come back," I said, "as the new store manager, with full and complete and autonomous control over the store's budget, its hiring, and its community outreach programs." I paused, letting the full weight of my terms settle on him. "And my first act as manager," I continued, "will be to institute a new and permanent good neighbor policy. Any regular customer at any time who is having a tough day or who has forgotten their wallet or who just needs a quiet place to sit will receive their coffee on the house. No questions asked." That, I concluded, a slow, cold smile on my face, is my price. It is non-negotiable. He looked at me, at the quiet, unimportant barista who was now holding his entire and very expensive career in his hands, and I saw in his pale, terrified eyes a flicker of a new, humbling understanding. He had not just been defeated by me, he had been defeated by a force he could not comprehend. The simple and profoundly unprofitable power of human kindness. "Okay," he whispered, a single, pathetic, satisfying word of surrender. "Okay." I closed the door on the man who had fired me, the man who had, in a strange and beautiful, ironic twist, just made me his boss. The protest was over. The battle was won. But as I looked around my own small and quiet apartment, I knew my work was not done. My community, my friends, my regulars, they had just fought a war for me. It was time for me to go back to the cafe and show them that their faith in me had not been misplaced.
I walked back into the daily grind the next morning, but I was not the same man who had walked out of it a few days before. I was not the heartbroken, unemployed barista anymore. I was the manager. The keys to the front door, the ones my former boss, Mr. Roth, had so bitterly handed over to me, felt heavy and strange in my pocket. They were not just keys to a building. They were the keys to a new and very unexpected future. The cafe was already full, but this time, there was not a silent, angry protest. It was a celebration. The regulars, my friends, my army, were all there. But now, the tables were filled with steaming cups of coffee, with plates of pastries, with the happy, chaotic, and beautiful sound of a community that had been restored. When I walked through the door, wearing the crisp, new polo shirt of a manager instead of my old, coffee-stained apron, the entire room erupted. They did not just clap. They stood, and they cheered. It was a loud and joyful, moving wave of sound. Agnes, the sweet elderly woman who had been the quiet and unknowing catalyst for this entire revolution, came up to me and gave me a hug. "Welcome home, dear," she had whispered. My first act as the new manager was a simple, symbolic one. I walked behind the counter, the place where I had spent 5 years of my life. I brewed a pot of Earl Grey tea, exactly the way I knew Agnes liked it, with a single slice of lemon, and I served it to her myself. "This one," I said, with a smile that was just for her, "is on the house." My second act was to write out a new sign on a small, simple chalkboard. I placed it on the counter, right next to the cash register, for all to see. It read, "The Good Neighbor Policy. Life is hard. Coffee helps. If you are having a tough day or are a little short on cash, please speak to the manager. Your coffee is on us. All we ask is that you pay the kindness forward one day when you can." The months that followed were the best of my professional life. The cafe did not just survive, it thrived. Our sales, under the new and very inefficient policy of institutionalized kindness, did not go down. They went up. The story of our small, quiet rebellion had become a local legend, and people came from all over the city, not just for our coffee, but to be a part of a place that stood for something more than just profit. Mr. Roth, I learned, had been transferred to a struggling location in another state. His career was not over, but his days as a petty tyrant were. And a few months after our protest, a very senior and very powerful executive from the corporate head office paid us a surprise visit. She did not come to reprimand me. She came to learn. She spent the entire day in our cafe, watching, listening, talking to the regulars. And at the end of the day, she just shook her head, a look of a new and very real understanding on her face. "We spent millions of dollars on marketing and brand loyalty studies," she had said to me. "And you, Liam, you seem to have figured out the secret for the price of a single cup of tea." The story ends as it began, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I am behind the counter, not because I have to be, but because it is where I belong. The cafe is full, a warm, bustling, and happy place. Agnes is at her usual table by the window, a cup of tea in her hand, holding court with the group of her friends. I look around at this small, beautiful world, at the community that had fought for me, at the home I had almost lost, and I think about my old boss, about his cold corporate mantra, "We are not a charity." He had been wrong. We were not just a business. We were not just a charity. We were something better. We were a community. And I was its very lucky and very grateful keeper. An absolutely brilliant and heartwarming story about the power of a community and how kindness is always the best business model. What a perfect and deeply satisfying ending. What do you think of the community's silent protest? Let us know in the comments below. If you were cheering for Liam and his loyal customers, please show your support by hitting that like button and be sure to subscribe for more incredible stories of karma and justice. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.